Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of Kura. And a happy new year. This is our first episode for this year. And also before we start, I'd like to request everyone who hasn't someone subscribe please subscribe. It helps us a lot to put out these contents. So, hamro Naya Borsa, and we've got a new Prime Minister.
Yes, and this is something we clearly did not see coming because we've talked about Prachanda twice or thrice. There was the one incident where we saw Google Trends where he was shrinking in popularity, and then we had this other episode where we talked about how Sherbahadur Deuba was nominated the leader of the constituent parliamentary committee, Nepali Congress. At that point, he was out of the radar, right? The Maoists were the third largest party, or even they were the third largest party. They were nowhere to be seen. And all of a sudden, the guy makes a comeback. That was...
And that too, when we were hearing news about Prachanda and Deuba getting into a coalition. There were news that I read here. We were seeing those news. And the next day, Deuba just throws a googly, man. What? The most shock. It's the most unexpected plot twist.
It actually turns out it actually played very close to a suspense movie. So it turns out they had a meeting. Prachanda and Sherbahadur Deuba had a meeting during the first half of the day. And then Prachanda went to see Oli. And turns out Deuba was waiting for Oli at Balwatar. Oli never showed up. He saw in the news that they had agreed to make Prachanda Prime Minister. So it was basically they pulled the rug underneath Sherbahadur Deuba, which is hilarious and weird at the same time. How can this actually play like a political drama? House of Cards era the feeling I news
Nepali politics is insane. I sometimes think about when these old guys meet. What do they talk about?
How do they start?
How do they start? What do they talk about? What are the conversations like between them? What? Because just to remember, last year, you knew when Oli dissolved the parliament and Prachanda and Oli were just giving out speeches against each other and showing whose party is the biggest, demonstrations, protests, dunya tamasha garra thyo against each other.
Exactly.
And now they're in bed together.
Exactly. And there was this news. This is news. This is not school gossip. There was a piece of news that said Madhav Nepal ra KP Oli le 20 mahina पछि संवादहीनता तोडे अरे. Two people talk after 20 months. That is news. It is kind of depressing and funny at the same time. The angle say. But yeah, this is Prachanda's third spell. But I don't know whether to be hopeful or disappointed at how things have played out.
But he was sworn in that Jan 10th he's also going to have to do a vote of confidence, right?
Yeah.
So मलाई चाहिँ कस्तो नेपाली पोलिटिक्समा अहिले यो सिचुएसन हेरेर चाहिँ जे पनि हुन सक्छ जस्तो लागिसक्यो
क्या I mean he's moved in to Balwatar. I hope he stays there longer than the last British Prime Minister. He will unless something funny happens. You don't know what happens, right? Next 5 days there might be a lot of things happening, but if somebody switches sides, because it's a hung parliament, basically nobody can count on anybody. So if somebody sweetens the deal, this might fall apart. There is a non-zero chance of this falling apart. That's true.
Yeah, but on the other side, so this seems like the perfect play for the Congress party to then now overthrow Sherbahadur Deuba as the party leader and put somebody else in place.
Yeah, because he got played. You position yourself as this tactical leader who got the party through elections and all of that. And then you basically get this young guy running against you, and then you defeat him. And then at the end of the day, despite of being the largest party, you're not able to put things together. I think about whether that's good or not is a different story. But then if we're looking for change within different pockets of the party, and the leadership change ko case ma obviously Nepali Congress was the only party that had elections. we hope to see that in other parties as well. And there's some hopeful news which we will get back to Maoist Pitrai Pani, which was unexpected and positive. We'll see if that brings any fruit. But I think this gives them the perfect fodder to play their cards against Deva and start making him less relevant, which will be good for everybody.
Yeah.
If
So
they manage to.
eventually.
Yeah.
On the flip side, we've got a new home minister.
Yes. But before we do that, just full side, because then I'm guessing we've been talking about the Nepali Congress internal politics a lot in the last few episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And the fundamental reason for that has been that's the only party where something happens inside the party.
Yeah.
Every other party had been pretty much stagnant. Oli Nirbirod, Prachanda Nirbirod, Pairathenta. But then something interesting that came into light was Maoists are saying senior leaders are like Mantralayama push nagarni. Third generation leaders are like push garni bandra. They've come out and said that. So who comes into power and how do they perform? That's obviously something that's yet to be seen. Top leadership, my Prachanda doesn't seem to want to give up anything from what we've seen so far. But then at least म प्रधानमन्त्री भएसम्म चाहिँ जेनरेसनल चेन्ज चाहिन्छ भन्ने खालको एटिट्युड चाहिँ देखाएको छ, विच इज obviously not what's the best. I know, but then I think it's a good middle ground that we can say, okay, केही त भइरहेछ भनेर चित्त बुझाउनलाई केही चाहिँ दिए जस्तो लाग्यो.
I'm not going to make bets too soon, like until
no, not at all, not at all.
But it's a good thing that they've come out and like said this. So
exactly,
let's hope for the best.
See, my qualm is again, the finance ministry ko situation हेरेर चाहिँ मलाई बर्बादै लाग्छ हैन. You need somebody who understands things in a position like that, right?
मलाई that's how Nepali politics ma the ministries are just passed around. I find it very funny. I don't know if this happens around the world. Is it just in Nepal? Like people who have no knowledge about like education become the education minister. People, it's just like you get this, you handle this, you do this. Without no prior experience or without no knowledge. Somebody can be a great engineer, and then they put him in like health and like or like women and children ministry like with you can't even put them together. So
I mean, despite of all the flack, I think we've talked about this somewhere about Yuvraj Khatioda's short spell in the Oli government. If you go back and look at what he did at that point of time, that shows what happens when you have somebody that has acumen. Of course, he had political ambitions. He chose a different career path afterwards. He went on to become the ambassador, but then there was a reasoning behind the decisions because his whole story was हाम्रो अहिलेको सिस्टम धान्नलाई जति खर्च छ त्यति खर्च त हामीले इन्टर्नली उठाउनु पर्छ, and to do that we need to do X, Y and Z. Of course that's not popular, sure, हैन, but then that's just how it is. And then he had an interview recently that I watched, हैन. He breaks these things down logically, हैन, and for me it's something that I can understand. I can see the sense in it. His decisions were not the most popular decisions, sure. Was that the best way to go about it? I don't know. I don't understand macro-prudential policy that well. Are his arguments logically sound? Of course they are. It's much more sound than Prachanda coming out and saying petrol ko bhau ghataunalai मैले निर्देशन दिए भनेर, because that's not how it should happen. पेट्रोलको भाउ कम हुनुपर्छ अहिले भन्दा probably, sure, हैन, तर is that how you do it? प्रधानमन्त्रीले आदेश दियो पेट्रोलको भाउ घट्यो. That's not the kind of economy we're in, हैन. So त्यो अलिकति एक्युमेन भएको मान्छे भयो भने डिफरेन्स हुन्छ भनेर I think that was one thing. Speaking of ministers, you brought this up. What do you think of Ravi Lamichhane saying these guys are all supposed to go and then going and becoming home minister in Prachanda's cabinet, because he's received a lot of criticism for this as well?
No, I think like he has kind of understand only बुझिसक्यो like हुन्छ नि यो खेल खेल्नलाई चाहिँ you have to be a खेलाडी खाली हुन्छ नि. So I think he's not far from, because he's interviewed these people for all like हुन्छ नि most of his life. He knows how the game is played. He's very aware of how politics works in Nepal. अनि I think obviously his party also got into the coalition, and the coalition ma छिर्ने, I think one of the thing was like I need something back. Obviously like त्यो एउटा give and take kind of relation मा नै हाम्रो नेपालको politics कायम छ हैन. So I think like this is what has happened हुन्छ नि. I think he wanted एउटा like a crucial place, होइन, उसको
exactly.
where he could like actually move some pieces or make some change, होइन, and he kind of understood that and he got in touch with, got in a coalition with these.
They're a major party right now, so of course they were going to be a part. So you think this is more of a this was always bound to happen kind of a way you look at it?
I don't see it happening any other way. Like the system is too big for like one party, one new party, or like a few young individual candidates to change the whole system.
Okay.
Like,
okay.
Malai say how I see it is, if you really want to make your situation, if you want to change the game, you have to first kind of be a part of the game. So I'm looking at it that way. I mean,
I'm on the same boat. I'm also on the same boat. Because many people have said you're going now and all of that. The whole point is you've got 20 seats in the parliament. You're not the biggest party. You can't push anything off, and you need to show results. And the only way to show results is to take up a major position. I have so that's that. Mero life necessity theo, yes theo. I have two problems with it at the same time. First is more personal because Robbie Lamisane isn't my favorite parliamentarian from the party. I have a lot of people that I admire in that party who are in the parliament, who might have done a better job. एउटा चाहिँ त्यो इस्यु हो. अर्को चाहिँ गृह मन्त्रालय भनेको रिजल्ट्स डेलिभर गर्नलाई अब्भियस ठाउँ होइन जस्तो लाग्छ मलाई चाहिँ. अफकोर्स इन टर्म्स अफ सिक्योरिटी एन्ड देन हाउ द गभर्मेन्ट इन्टरेक्ट्स विथ द पब्लिक इट बिकम्स मोर इम्पोर्टेन्ट. फेयर इनफ. तर आई डोन्ट थिङ्क इट्स अ रिजल्ट्स त्यो रिजल्ट ओरिएन्टेड काम गर्न मिल्ने ठाउँहरू चाहिँ अरू धेरै छ जस्तो लाग्छ क्या मलाई. फर इन्स्टेन्स शिक्षा मन्त्रालयमा, स्वास्थ्य मन्त्रालयमा इमिडिएटली पब्लिकसँग इन्टरेक्सनमा आएर यु क्यान शो रिजल्ट्स एन्ड इट्स अल्सो अ ब्रोकन सिस्टम नि त. जस्तै फर अ सर्ट एक्जाम्पल एन्ड यु वर्क इन द सेम टिम. सो जब नवीन्द्र जोशी वाज द इन्डस्ट्री मिनिस्टर, there were small tangible things that were done, like it was really well executed. उद्योग मन्त्रालय भने खासै भाउ पाउने मन्त्रालय पनि थिएन त्यो बेला, हैन? And that's what he said as well. That was like he said, and I mean he's passed away now, but then the way he said it, I think that was a loss that he passed away. I think he would have done something good because his whole thing was जब म उद्योग मन्त्री भएँ मलाई सबले उद्योग मन्त्रालय त इम्पोर्टेन्ट छैन जस्तो गर्यो अनि मलाई त उद्योग इम्पोर्टेन्ट लाग्यो, सो मैले चाहिँ के गर्न मिल्छ भनेर फोकस गरेँ भनेर. समथिङ स्मल द्याट ही डिड. फर इन्स्टेन्स त्यो नेपालमा डोर्मेन्ट कम्पनीजहरू कति छ कम्पनी डिरेजिस्टर गर्न नमिलेर डिरेजिस्टर गर्न झन्झट भएर ही वाज लाइक यो किन गाह्रो भयो, यसलाई सिम्प्लिफाई के गरेर गर्न सकिन्छ. सिम्पल स्टेप्स, होइन? दे केम आउट विथ समथिङ लाइक द्याट. इट मेड लाइफ इजी फर सो मेनी पिपल. I remember him for that small initiative that he did, and that's good. For me, that was big because it seemed simple. Nobody did it, right? So त्यस्तो खालको काम गृह मन्त्रालयमा बसेर गर्न मिल्छ जस्तो लाग्दैन. It's a powerful place to be, but is it a place where you can do things that matter to the individual? Probably, but then not as directly as some of the other ministries. Just like Gagan Thapako short spell in the health ministry, and he has tangible results to show. He has 15 things to talk about to the public. यो गरेँ भनेर. So I think if you're genuinely interested in showing something, I don't think they made the best choice.
I will just have to watch and see how it plays out. They like also coming back to how obviously there are better people in the same party who could have been the face. Like I think like it or not, we have to understand that democracy is like a popularity contest.
And that was necessary.
They like Robbie Lamisane is the face of the party. He might not be the best person in the party. Exactly. He might not be the most brightest. He might not come up with the most things. Obviously, as a reporter, also we don't basically you and me share the same views. But obviously, like coming down to democracy is a popularity contest. You need a face. You need the democracy and marketing ma यति धेरै relation देख्छु नि म. Like selling a product and selling a person is like very similar.
So मेरो लागि चाहिँ आइडियल सिनारियो के हुन्थ्यो भने रवि लामिछाने likes the limelight. गृह मन्त्रालय very powerful place, हैन? I would have been very happy if they would somehow put themselves together to negotiate two ministries. He could have ended up where he is, and I'd have really liked it if Swasthya Shiksha चाहिँ they had one of those places they had one of their capable people doing that as well. So in that case, you would have the face and you would have something happening in places where actions were possible. अनि त्यसपछि they had people with expertise. त्यो भए मलाई चाहिँ I would have been happier if that had been their position. But then I think now what we have, we just hope for the best and see what happens. हैन.
I think for the first
so
Kura.
I think so I think that's enough for the first Kura. But then, speaking of Robbie Lemisani, apparently I read this piece of news that he directed the passport office to get things in order, which takes us to our dosro Kura, because we've been talking about policy and this and that. अनि अघि भर्खर हामीले नवीन्द्र जोशीको पनि इक्जाम्पल दियौँ, where the government interacts with the public and how is that भनेर. So one of the things that has been making rounds in the news in the last week is passport office बाट काम भइरहेको छैन राम्ररी. सिस्टम सफ्टवेयरमा प्रब्लम आएर कति दिनदेखि सफ्टवेयर चलाएको छैन. 3-4 दिन भयो पासपोर्ट इस्यु भइरहेको छैन, नयाँ प्रिन्ट गर्न मिलेको छैन. एज फार एज आई रिमेम्बर त्यो ड्राइभिङ लाइसेन्समा पनि त्यही इस्यु छ, प्रिन्ट गर्न नसकेर लाइसेन्स इस्यु भएको छैन होइन. वेयर डु वी गेट इट रङ?
होइन मलाई चाहिँ होइन आई रिमेम्बर द्याट बिफोर कमिङ आई थिङ्क यु हेभ सम पर्सनल एक्सपिरियन्सेस अल्सो होइन. तर बिफोर कमिङ टु लन्डन म त्यो एनओसी लिन जाँदाखेरि क्या इज सच अ सिम्पल थिङ टु डु होइन. तर यस्तो रिडन्डेन्ट कामहरू के एउटा झ्यालबाट अर्को झ्यालमा छ, अर्को झ्यालबाट अर्को झ्यालमा छ होइन. देयर इज अ गाई हु गिभ्स यु द्याट. मलाई त एकछिन सो माई कोर्स इज कल्ड प्रोस्पेरिटी इनोभेसन एन्ड अन्टरप्रेन्योरसिप होइन. द गाई हु वाज चेकिङ इट said like हुन्छ नि prosperity is it related to religion. Then he held my paper for like 10-15 minutes straight and looked it up and looked what it means and asked like 10 other people what it means. It's like religion पढ्ने हो भने बाहिर जानु मिल्दैन अरे. I'm like it is not related to religion, but even if it was हुन्छ नि like why is it a problem? होइन
मैले नपुछे no objection किन चाहिन्छ? Like why would any government have an objection with its citizens going and getting an education abroad? I don't get it. I don't see the point of it. I think that whole process needs to be scrapped. That's beyond the point. होइन. अर्को कुरा यो झ्यालको कुरामा अर्को एउटा एनेक्डोट छ मेरो यातायात व्यवस्था विभागको, जहाँबाट हामी ड्राइभिङ लाइसेन्स लिन्छौँ होइन. त मैले दुईवटा साइडबाट देखाएँ क्या त्यो होइन. एउटा चाहिँ बाहिरबाट हेर्दा 8वटा झ्याल छ होइन. अनि हरेक झ्यालमा गएर लाइन बस्नुपर्छ. एउटा झ्यालमा लाइन बस्यो 10 मिनट लाग्छ, केही कागज आउँछ त्यो लिएर दोस्रो झ्यालमा लाइन बस्यो, तेस्रो झ्यालमा लाइन बस्यो. आई हर्ड द सेम एक्सपिरियन्स फ्रम अ पर्सन हु ह्याड कनेक्सन्स. के रहेछ भने त्यो 8वटै झ्याल एउटै कोठाको झ्याल रहेछ भित्रबाट होइन. सो फर द जेनरल पब्लिक यु गो टु एभ्री विन्डो एन्ड यु लाइन अप इन एभ्री विन्डो. यु नो समबडी, यु गो फ्रम द इनसाइड अनि पहिलो झ्यालमा बसेका मान्छेलाई यु गिभ योर डकुमेन्ट्स. त्यो भित्रबाट खुर्र पास भएर लास्टको मान्छेको हातबाट आइपुग्छ होइन. 5 मिनटभित्रमा यु गेट इट डन. माई पोइन्ट इज यो त यसै गरी गरे भएन भने
भित्रै मान्छेले यु गिभ इट टु द फर्स्ट पर्सन देन यु टेक अर्को ठाउँमा होइन.
मतलब यो सबैलाई त्यही गरे हुँदैन, सबको टाइम बच्छ नि, किन नगरे खालको हुने क्या.
मलाई त्यो यातायात उसमा पनि अरू लाइक त्यही एनओसीको कुरामा पनि देयर इज रिडन्डेन्ट जब्स के त
हो.
Like one person signs it and there's a person who checks it.
Yes.
Like यतिकै के आएर साइन देखाउनु पर्ने के. And that person's job is just to say okay.
त्यही भन.
I'm like why?
यो नहटाइकन लाइन बस्ने ऊ हटाउँछौँ यताउति भनेर हुँदैन. So little things you don't even need anything के. यो नेपालमा भएभरको BBA पढाउने कलेजमा अपरेसन्स म्यानेजमेन्ट पढ्ने स्टुडेन्ट्सहरूलाई लगेर ल यो तिमीहरूको प्रोजेक्ट हाउ कैन यु स्ट्रिम लाइन दिस भन्यो भने 1 हप्तामा निकाल्छन् क्या स्टुडेन्ट्सहरूले 25-30वटा अप्सन्स. यसरी छिटो हुन्छ, यसरी यहाँ यति टाइम बच्छ भनेर. इट्स भेरी फन्डामेन्टल नि. अब यातायातको अर्को यातायात इट्स माई लिस्ट फेभरेट प्लेस टु गो बिकज म त्यो ब्लु बुक रिन्यू गर्न जान्थेँ होइन. पहिला ब्लु बुक रिन्यू गर्न जाँदा के भन्थ्यो भने ब्लु बुक लिएर गयो. Now everything is automated, right? So what happens is it's actually very simple. You go to the window, you pay your money, you get a printed receipt. रसिद प्रिन्ट भए पुग्दैन. के गर्नुपर्छ? तोक लाउनुपर्छ. तोक लाउने भने के हो, बुढा हाकिमहरू एउटा कोठामा बसेका छन्, त्यहाँ लाइन बस्नुपर्छ. त्यो हाकिमहरूले प्रिन्टेड रसिद हेर्छन्, हाम्रो अफिसमा पैसा आयो कि आएन. त्यो ब्लु बुक हेर्छन् अनि ब्लु बुकमा साइन गर्छन्, दिन्छन् फिर्ता. किन?
I'm saying I think like it's government job भनेपछि like हुन्छ नि नेपालमा चाहिँ is like government जागिर is lifelong. So they're like we can't fire these people. अब यो कुरा डिजिटल भइसक्यो तर यिनीहरूलाई काम त दिनु पर्यो होइन. सो यिनीहरूलाई के काम दिने? They still
What is the point? क्या त्यो रसिद र ब्लु बुक लिएर गए भएन ल ट्राफिकले चेक गर्ने ठाउँमा. It's hilarious. It's hilarious.
But since we're in यातायातको कुरा, यात्री we come to हाम्रो नेपालमा बनेको लाइक हुन्छ नि बाइक्स होइन. सो दे डुइङ अ ग्रेट जब. म पहिले नेपाल ड्राइभ्समा हुँदाखेरि पनि लाइक वी वर वान अफ द फर्स्ट पिपल हु गट लाइक हुन्छ नि ह्यान्ड्स अन एक्सपिरियन्स. सो वेन दे वर एक्चुली बिल्डिङ द बाइक दे कल्ड अस फर लाइक हुन्छ नि यो कता कता राख्नु गर्ने. सो दे वर लाइक टेकिङ एडभाइस फ्रम लाइक डिफ्रेन्ट जर्नलिस्ट मिडिया people to also like help them with design of the bikes as well, and we were the first people to also like interview them. Etauti kura just like म यता यात्रीलाई चाहिँ क्लोजली फलो गरिरहेको हुन्छु क्या. अनि देन नाउ दे स्टार्टेड पुसिङ आउट बाइक्स विच आर लाइक नाइस हुन्छ नि भेरी गुड बाइक्स. अनि मान्छेहरू पिपल आर सोइङ अमेजिङ इन्ट्रेस्ट. अनि तर यहाँ प्रब्लम के भइरहेछ भन्दाखेरि पिपल आर राइडिङ अराउन्ड द बाइक्स अराउन्ड काठमाडौँ विदाउट अ नम्बर प्लेट.
ओके.
And there is a very good reason for it, because हाम्रो कन्स्टिट्युसनमा कुन चाहिँ वेट एक्ट I have to see the exact act, but then त्यो एक्ट अनुसार चाहिँ there is no way to register Nepali made bikes in Nepal, because त्यो people didn't like when they were writing the constitution they didn't think नेपालमा bikes or गाडी or anything बन्छ.
यो एक्ट लेख्ने कामहरू चाहिँ the lack of vision देखेर अचम्म लाग्छ कि when you write a piece of policy it needs to apply to a general case नि त. Like you said, I also read that piece and it turns out the reason is सवारी दर्ता गर्नलाई दुईटा कुरा चाहिन्छ अरे. एउटा चाहिँ इम्पोर्ट सर्टिफिकेट चाहिन्छ अरे होइन, अनि अर्को चाहिँ इन्स्पेक्सन गरेको रिजल्ट चाहिन्छ अरे. तर प्रब्लम के भयो, इम्पोर्ट गरेको छैन, इम्पोर्ट सर्टिफिकेट हुने कुरै भएन.
नेपालमा इनफ्याक्ट इन्स्पेक्सन डिपार्टमेन्टै छैन.
I don't think so. I'm not sure if that's correct, but I wouldn't be surprised because सबै बाइक इन्डियाबाट इन्स्पेक्ट भएर आउँछ. छैन नै. There is no त्यो अटोमोटिभ इन्स्पेक्सन उनी छैन, डिपार्टमेन्टै छैन. I doubt if ऊ पनि छ कि छैन के त्यो फ्रेमवर्क, लाइक के चाहिँ इन्स्पेक्सन गर्ने हो, के चाहिँ प्यारामिटर्स भित्र हुनुपर्छ भनेर पनि I doubt if there is like a well defined testable set of parameters. अब इन्डियामा BS4 BS6 भनेर एमिसन स्ट्यान्डर्ड्सहरू यताउति जे छ नि भारत स्ट्यान्डर्ड भनेर, युरोपमा युरो त्यो सेफ्टी टेस्टिङ छ नि युरो एनक्याप फर प्यासेन्जर सेफ्टी एन्ड अल अफ द्याट. अनि इन्डियामा पनि छ, सबै इन्डियाबाटै सबै टेस्ट भएर आउँछ. सो माई पोइन्ट इज वेयर इज द भिजन बिहाइन्ड राइटिङ अ पिस अफ पोलिसी फर अटोमोबाइल रेजिस्ट्रेसन इन नेपाल होइन. नेपालमा बन्दैन कहिले पनि चाहिँदै भनेर लेख्दै नलेख्ने हो त भने होइन. इट्स लाइक कहिले 100 वर्षपछि बन्यो भने पनि त्यो होप खै त क्या. पोलिसी बनाउने मान्छेमा होप त चाहियो नि. वेयर इज यर अप्टिमिजम डुड? एटलिस्ट गिभ मी सम होप हुन्छ नि. भने टेक आउट अ पिस अफ पेपर, डोन्ट मेक इट लाइक नेपालमा बाइकै बन्दैन कहिले नै बन्ने हो र किन लेख्ने, त्यो पोसिबिलिटी नै किन कन्सिडर गर्ने भने जस्तो क्या.
म यो कुरा सोचेपछि चाहिँ आई वाज थिङ्किङ लाइक अरू केमा चाहिँ यस्तो छैन भनेर क्या.
एक्ज्याक्टली. त्यो लेख्ने मान्छेको लागि त इट्स इफ यु राइटिङ दिज थिङ्स यु डोन्ट हेभ टु थिङ्क अबाउट इट एट द्याट स्टेज क्या. यु क्यान जस्ट राइट. नेपालमा बनेको खण्डमा निम्न कुराहरू हुन्छन्, आयात गरेको खण्डमा निम्न कुराहरू हुन्छन्. जबसम्म बन्दैन तबसम्म आयात गरेको खण्डमा के हुने भनेर लेखा हुन्छ. कमसेकम एउटा बाटो त खुल्थ्यो नि त्यसपछि. ए ओके इन्स्पेक्सन गर्न पऱ्यो, यो चाह्यो त्यो चाह्यो भनेर छैन. अनि के गर्ने? त्यो complicated situation के.
When you write these policies it's supposed to be like held up के एउटा ड्युरेसन सम्म हुन्छ नि अलिकति, because you're not writing for today नि त. This policy त लाइक कति धेरै एक्टहरू त कति fucking hundreds of years को लागि नै चल्छ नि त होइन. until and unless it's broken it's supposed to be lived on खालि. अनि लाइक
कति डिसिजन्सहरू हाम्रो कोर्ट्समा अझै अहिले त मोडिफाई भयो, तर मुलुकी ऐन पनि साइट हुन्छ नि. राणाकालको बेलाको मुलुकी ऐन अहिले पनि इरेलेभेन्ट भएको छैन. फर इन्स्टेन्स इट डजन्ट गो अवे द्याट इजिली होइन. लट अफ थिङ्स क्यारी ओभर.
सो केटाहरूले बाइक बनायो होइन, त्यसपछि इन्ट्रेस्ट पनि आयो, मान्छेहरूले डाउन पेमेन्ट गरेर पैसाले बुक गरेर किन्नु पनि थाल्यो होइन. बट अब नाउ दे फेसिङ सो मच प्रब्लम्स के विच इज उनीहरूको केसमा त बिचराहरू वेन इट कम्स लाइक हुन्छ नि बिजनेस गर्नु, जब त्यो गभर्मेन्टसँग त्यो ट्याकल गर्नुपर्छ नि. जस्ट इमेजिन फर यु टु सेल यर प्रडक्ट यु निड टु चेन्ज अ फकिङ ल लाइक
होइन त. त्यो त होइन ल दुःख भए पनि कम्प्लायन्समा दुःख भयो भने आइड बी लाइक ओके मेबी दे सुड हेभ अल्सो थट अबाउट इट भनेर. जस्तै बाइक लिएर गयो इन्स्पेक्सनको लागि, सर्टन प्यारामिटर्स पुगेको छैन, यो कुरा भएको छैन भने ल किन नपढ्या त, किन नबुझ्या त, मार्केटमा बाइक बेच्ने भनेपछि त यो सब कुराहरू त हेर्नुपर्छ भनेर त्यो पनि गर्न मिल्थ्यो कि. बट देन यहाँ त अझै फन्डामेन्टल इस्यु भयो नि
अब नाउ होइन द आम थिङ्किङ दिस इज जस्ट लाइक अब मैले जे देखेर हुर्केको छु होइन इट्स लाइक अ भेरी पेसिमिस्टिक भ्यू होइन सो दे पुश फर दिस होइन लाइक नेपालमा बिकज दे आर द ओन्ली कम्पनी होइन दे पुश फर दिस दे आर द ओन्ली पिपल हु निड इट राइट नाउ इन नेपाल दे पुश फर दिस लाइक द गभर्मेन्ट क्यान अब गभर्मेन्ट अफिसेसहरू त्यस्तै हो होइन देन इट ओपन्स अप अ वे टु हुन्छ नि लाइक now they need it, they're desperate for it. They opens up the way for like, I'm like, hey, so we'll make favorable policies for you. Natra, they will make a parameter that the bike won't pass. And like we've seen this happen, you know.
अर्को डर चाहिँ के पनि छ भने मलाई पर्सनली डर लाग्यो आई डोन्ट थिङ्क इट्स गोना ह्यापन बिकज दे आर टु स्मल टु बी अ थ्रेट है नत्र अर्को प्रब्लम चाहिँ इफ यु लुक एट हु सेल्स बाइक्स इन नेपाल today
and they
it's
might
not in their interest to let these things go smoothly.
Yes.
So how does that work? Aile say luckily I don't think they're a big threat, but if somebody does perceive this as a real threat, they have plenty of ways to stall this neither because who sells bikes in Nepal? I mean they're the who's who of the country, all of them, right? Everybody has a bike dealership in Nepal.
So we know like it's in the hurdles of street again.
Yeah, so it might not be easy for them, which is weird. Like, at least let them have a good shot at this, you know?
Yeah, man. I'm rooting for them.
Exactly. Me too.
All right. So from riding in the bikes streets of Nepal, we're going to flying to Nepal. This is our Tesro Kura of the day.
Exactly. So good news happening. The Pokhara International Airport is finally open. Which means you can skip the Kathmandu
beautiful 5-hour
entirely. Also, yes, you don't have to go through Kathmandu to go to Pokhara, which I am actually looking forward to. I might actually consider trying that next time because.
But I think like Pokhara Airport, for me personally, I felt like there could be better infrastructure built rather than doing that, like cutting off like Kathmandu as a whole. I feel like Kathmandu airport especially needs a revamp that, but then I feel मलाई चाहिँ एउटा fast track train like हुन्छ नि the distance is not that long एउटा fast track train or something बनाएको भए चाहिँ it would do good for both the cities and tourists, like you could actually monetize from tourists more from both the countries so I feel like काठमाडौँमा ल्यान्ड भएर चाहिँ एउटा fast track train हुन्छ नि 1 घण्टा 2 घण्टाको fast track train बनाएको भए चाहिँ I mean, I feel like that would have been a better infrastructure project, which would actually support two cities and actually अझै धेरै पैसा आउँथ्यो क्या.
Just for some context, because it is not that far, I agree. Because Kathmandu to Pokhara is what 200 kilometers.
200 kilometers, yeah.
I don't know where Kathmandu ends and where Pokhara starts in this argument because Kathmandu is big. होइन महाराजगञ्जबाट कलङ्की पुग्न लाग्छ 1.5 घण्टा कहिले कहिले त्यस्तै भयो भने सो द्याट इज समथिङ वी माइट निड टु लुक एट बट देन इफ यु लुक एट अब युजुअली सिटिज भन्दा धेरै नै बाहिर हुन्छ एयरपोर्ट्स बाहिरतिर स्पेसली हाम्रो केसमा त इट्स फार फार अवे होइन लन्डन हेज 7 एयरपोर्ट्स इट्स अ डिफरेन्ट सिचुएसन अल टुगेदर आई डोन्ट थिङ्क लन्डन फल्स इन दिस क्याटेगोरी यु क्यान फ्लाइ इन्टु योर प्रिफर्ड साइड अफ लन्डन इफ यु वान्ट होइन त्यो त फरक छ I was just checking. Oslo airport चाहिँ म अहिले बसिरहेको एरिया भन्दा and I don't live that far out of the city होइन it's 50 kilometers from the middle of the city which is quite a distance and we say that the airport is closed. It takes us city center but it's a 19-minute train ride and the trains here are not that fast. So you are onto something when you say okay maybe यो पनि हुन्थ्यो होइन but then that takes time and it's not completely pointless to have another international airport in close proximity to be honest and Pokhara does get its own volume of tourists jasto लाग्छ मलाई चाहिँ I think Pokhara has that potential
होइन मलाई चाहिँ यस्तो I mean like त्यो we can talk about this हुन्छ नि we can talk about obviously Pokhara has तर मैले चाहिँ होइन टुरिस्टहरू ल्याउने एउटा बाटो हुनु पर्यो क्या यताबाट आऊ then you can go here you can go there खालि हुन्छ नि अब जस्तै when you go to Thailand नि होइन like 89 most people they land to Bangkok first And then there is every single thing you can find. Because like international airport going straight to Phuket भन्दा पनि going to Bangkok and then taking a like taking a bus or like taking a local flight, like a domestic flight, would be much cheaper. Okay? I know. So you have people spend money in Bangkok also, then you can spend money in Phuket also, or wherever you want to go then. Talking about close proximity, I think Pokhara airport is also like right next to the city, and it's like literally 5 minutes, 10 minutes ठ्याक्कै बाहिर छ.
Pokhara, the reason I like the idea of Pokhara, we'll see how it fares. The reason I like the idea of Pokhara is it's probably one of the it's a nice mix of everything, the way the city is organized. So on Kathmandu airport ekdam cluttered pan cha. So if you're a tourist, it doesn't make a big difference whether you start your journey at Pokhara or Kathmandu. हैन
तर दाइ मैले अरू एउटा न्युज लाइक हेरिरहेको थिएँ, मैले ठ्याक्कै याद आयो होइन. सो पोखराको लाइक हुन्छ नि 3टा प्याराग्लाइडिङ साइटहरू वर क्लोज बिकज अफ द एयरपोर्ट. देयर इज ओन्ली 1 प्याराग्लाइडिङ साइट इन सारङकोट नाउ द्याट इज लाइक अपरेटेबल. सो हुन्छ नि मेजर पोखराको त्यो हो नि भनेको त्यस्तै लाइक त्यो ग्लाइडिङ थिङ्सहरू एन्ड लाइक प्याराग्लाइडिङ वाज अ ह्युज इन्डस्ट्री नि त. सो यसले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ एक्चुअल ड्यामेज चाहिँ भइरहेको छ to certain extent.
So can we offset that भन्ने कुरा हो. If म चाहिँ I'm very much in the direction of if that can be offset with more tourists coming in and spending more money on average, that may not be strictly necessary because those things can move, होइन. Because we're no short of places where you can have adventure tourism, होइन. अनि पोखराको अर्को चाहिँ इट्स भेरी त्यो ट्रेकिङ रुट्सहरू स्टार्ट गर्नलाई इट्स पर्फेक्टली पोजिसन्ड, होइन. सो इफ दे पिक अप अन द राइट थिङ्स, ट्रेक्सहरू यताउतिको लागि त लाइक if you're looking at tourists who are really looking at trekking and hiking and all of that, it makes more sense to fly into Pokhara and go into the mountains straight off than to go through Kathmandu, you know? So there might be an audience for it. Plus, considering how much flow they already get anyway, it might make a good business case just like the Malay say. Or personally, I always end up spending a good chunk of time in Pokhara anyway. So for me, it's a second option. So there might be a bias there. I know.
Yes.
But speaking of the new international airport, Bhairava airport started with a lot of fanfare, right? But we recently read that Aile airport, the international flights, Himalaya Airlines or Jazeera Airways, both of them have stopped flights at this point of time. Duita reason, right? So it has a visibility issue, right? An instrument, so basically just to get everybody on the same page, there is either visual guidance to landing, भने यसो बाहिर हेर्ने के देखिन्छ अनि त्यसपछि ल्यान्ड गर्ने, अर्को इन्स्ट्रुमेन्ट असिस्टेड ल्यान्डिङ हुन्छ वेयर इभन इफ यु डोन्ट ह्याभ एक्सट्रिमली गुड भिजिबिलिटी इन्स्ट्रुमेन्ट्स विल असिस्ट यु इन्टु मेकिङ अ ल्यान्डिङ, होइन. सो अहिले भैरवामा इन्स्ट्रुमेन्ट असिस्टेड ल्यान्डिङ छैन. सो बेसिकली यु हेभ टु हेभ क्लियर भिजिबिलिटी टु बी एबल टु ल्यान्ड. इन्स्ट्रुमेन्ट असिस्टेड ल्यान्डिङलाई इन्डियासँग कोअर्डिनेट गरेर इन्डियाबाट फ्लाइट पाथ ओपन अप गर्नुपर्छ र जुन अहिलेसम्म भएको छैन. माई पोइन्ट इज सिन्स द प्रोजेक्ट वाज conceived, that should have been a priority. It wasn't. But then already we are having problems sustaining one international airport, and Bhairava I thought was prominently gonna come up as a flight destination for one reason, because अहिले पनि नेपालको population is mostly concentrated in the southern belt, होइन. अनि त्यसपछि नेपालको माइग्रेन्ट लेबर फोर्समा जाने मान्छेहरूको कन्सन्ट्रेसन पनि southern side of the country बाटै छ. So for them, Bhairava would have been a much easier access point than Kathmandu. And that would have taken a lot of pressure off the airport as well. Malai चाहिँ त्यो लागेको थियो. That was how I was seeing it. But then multiple issues भइरहेको रहेछ. एउटा त visibility-को issue भयो. अर्को चाहिँ in the first weeks जो बाहिर काम गर्न जाने मान्छेलाई श्रम स्वीकृति चाहिन्छ अनि श्रम कार्यालयको एउटा डेस्क हुन्छ that you have to clear before you leave. त्यो पनि provision भएको रहेन रहेछ. So are you thinking through these decisions when you're looking at what the market is, होइन? What's your market, होइन? Bhairava is Lumbini is one side of why Bhairava airport makes sense. But then being in the middle of a population center in a way is also a selling point, होइन? So why wasn't that considered as a business case? Is anybody looking at these airports as a business case to begin with? Is a question.
मलाई चाहिँ कति धेरै एयरपोर्ट्सहरू यो जुन चाहिँ हाम्रो मोस्ट एयरपोर्ट्सहरू भइरहेको छ नि, आई फिल लाइक इट वाज बिकम मोर अफ अ पोलिटिकल त्यो अजेन्डा लाइक थिङ टु पुस rather than like actual examine गरेर which is like the best place to put in airport which is like the सबै कुरा गरेर I think that त्यो चाहिँ इकोनोमिकली चाहिँ मैले रिपोर्ट्सहरू पढे अनुसार चाहिँ इकोनोमिकली चाहिँ निजगढ with all the thing like हुन्छ नि seemed like the best place होइन and plus because it was like closely it was like अब kind of close proximity to Kathmandu जनकपुर अनि if you're doing the construction you could build like हुन्छ नि मैले त्यो आर्टिकल पढे अनुसार चाहिँ त्यो कन्स्ट्रक्सन गर्नलाई पनि you could bring in materials from 3 different like हुन्छ नि cities अनि so it was closely connected to the highway अनि यताउति but obviously the whole forest को बिचमा बनाउने and everything and visibility को कुरा गर्दाखेरि पनि the placement was also like actually like राम्रो so they actually examined everything you know there's a whole report on why Nizgod why that specific area you know but then obviously there's environmental sides to it
yeah and then अर्को कुरा चाहिँ are we evaluating these airports in terms of passenger volume because no matter who says what Nepal is not going to be a transit hub for flights
why do
between
you think so?
different parts of the world we're not positioned to be able to do that हैन कहाँ जाने मान्छेले नेपालमा ट्रान्जिट गर्छ वाइ इज इट अट्र्याक्टिभ बिकज द रिजन दुबई वर्क्स पिपल मेन्सन दिस अ लट होइन दुबई कतार केही नभए ठाउँमा एयरपोर्टमा यत्रो इन्भेस्ट गर्यो ट्रान्जिट हब भयो टर्की यत्रो छिटो यत्रो ग्रो भयो द रिजन इज देयर बिट्विन द इस्ट एन्ड द वेस्ट
I mean I would argue like हुन्छ नि न्यू दिल्ली वाज the New Delhi airport is somewhere like that हुन्छ नि and I think like काठमाडौँ जुन चाहिँ निजगढको एयरपोर्ट was trying to be like a competition to that.
But then it's not going to happen. The reason New Delhi makes such a strong business case is India is a billion people. New Delhi doesn't have to serve as an international transit hub. Even if New Delhi and Bombay serve as a transit hub for the population around it, in the states around it, it's sufficient to run a large airport. Okay? The population of India makes a strong case for an airport in every major location. Delhi makes its own case, Bombay can make its own case, Calcutta can make its own case, Bangalore can make its own case, right? Because they're looking at much larger volume, right? Only places like Dubai make sense because it's in the middle of the world. It's perfectly positioned to connect Africa, Asia, Europe, Americas, right? Because it's convenient and they can ferry a lot of people to and from, right?
Yep.
Only हाम्रो त्यो अब eastern sides तिर China भित्र all these airports are huge because again domestic volume यति धेरै छ and Singapore and Bangkok are already there which are reputed hubs serviced by reputed airlines. Like Singapore, Thai Airlines had a bankruptcy spell and all of that, fine. But before that, it was one of the best airlines in the market. I know. Singapore Airlines consistently rated the best airline. So people don't stop over in Singapore because Singapore is in the right location either. They stop at Singapore because Singapore Airlines services pretty much every destination you want. Same with Turkish, same with Emirates. So it's a combination of good Qatar. Airlines, good location and all of that, right? Do we have the capital to make something like that happen? Not at all. We don't. There's no doubt about it, right?
Exactly.
So end of the day हाम्रो अहिलेको एयरपोर्ट्सको पर्पस 3टा छ एउटा टुरिस्ट भित्र ल्याउने हैन अर्को नेपालबाट ट्राभलर्स बाहिर लाने ट्राभल गर्ने मान्छेहरू बेसिकली एन्ड अल अफ द्याट अर्को चाहिँ नेपालबाट माइग्रेन्ट लेबरलाई मिडल इस्ट पठाउने द्याट इज लाइक टु रुडिमेन्टरीली पुट इट दिस इज वाट इट डज हैन
And then do we need 4 international airports to do that?
Exactly. That becomes an obvious question. हैन जस्तै अब भैरवाको केस स्ट्रङ मेरो पर्सनल ओपिनियनमा मलाई लागेको के थियो भने साउथतिर पपुलेसन कन्सन्ट्रेटेड छ एन्ड काठमाडौँ डजन्ट मेक नेचुरल सेन्स फर पिपल टु हेभ टु गो थ्रु सबैजनालाई काठमाडौँबाटै फ्लाइ आउट गर्नुपर्छ भन्ने छैन सो एउटा अल्टरनेटिभ एयरपोर्ट भयो भने एन्ड लट अफ दिज एयरलाइन्स डु नट नेसेसरीली फ्लाइ इन्टु हब्स हैन जस्तै रसलखाइमा एयरपोर्ट छ शारजाहमा it's not a transit hub for flying further. It's a hub to fly into different parts of UAE. Right? So for them, where just they have a fly Dubai, it's a different case. It carries people who are flying into Dubai, but it also carries people flying to the rest of the world. For that flight, okay, mixed use ma, everybody flies, not everybody is going to the same destination. But then these airlines that are exclusively flying people into the Middle East and they don't even have connections, genuine connections offered at that airport, those flights can fly from anywhere. It doesn't really matter. And then in fact you can also provide better services tailored to people who are leaving हैन जस्तै नेपालमा अहिले काठमाडौँ एयरपोर्टमा जुन फियासको भइरा हुन्छ डकुमेन्ट भेरिफिकेसन यो त्यो हैन you can streamline these things नि त you can like make sure that they have the best experience you've got the best resources there to handle those things हैन it would have been better in that case, होइन? अनि प्लस लुम्बिनी टुरिज्मको केस पनि थियो भैरवाको लागि. So I think that would have made a business case. पोखरा र काठमाडौँ भयो भने tourism traffic serve गर्नलाई it's like within 200 kilometers you've got 2 airports. And then that brings us to the other thing that we want to talk about in this segment, which is Prachanda, our new Prime Minister, Pokhara Airport inauguration said that we are going to begin Nijgarh Airport as soon as possible. So the thought in my mind is, considering we have got 3 airports and not that many people to fly through these airports, what is the point of a 4th airport?
I mean, there is a significant rise. The reason your international airport wave came into place is because Tribhuvan airport is overly packed and the users max capacity pugera I think like it doubled from 2008 to 2016 or something. It like almost doubled or more than like the people using the airport. Tyo bhayera chai international airport ko ekdam badra ho. Tara again, that being said, 4 international airports चाहिँ अलिकति चाहिँदैन होला.
त्यो पनि concentrated area मा के if you're looking
concentrated like yeah
it's not that far नि. पोखरा भैरवा काठमाडौँ निजगढ भयो भने you'll basically make a rectangle that is tiny in the middle of Nepal, right?
Like त्यो भयो भने त everything will be like हुन्छ नि in a 4-hour 5-hour drive from like हुन्छ नि काठमाडौँको proximity भनौँ. Yeah, exactly. Like eventually it'll be that far. And at that point, you might as well just come in through one airport and fly domestic. Why not? Or like just drive if you build an highway. I feel like airport I feel like why do we not invest on our highways and like local connections? Like how are we not investing on connecting हाम्रो cities like राम्ररी अलि better हुन्छ नि.
Exactly.
Like
Pokhara is a problem ni. Just like drivability monsoon ma it's bad. And the last time I was there, Pokhara ko flight, I had a 8 o'clock flight which flew at 3 in the afternoon. So reliability and predictability अझै पनि local travel मा नभइरा भएर that definitely needs investment नि त्यो पनि.
मलाई चाहिँ त्यही हो त. मलाई चाहिँ personally I feel like infrastructure projects wise we should actually like invest more on highways and trains. Our Nepal does not do train very well, I don't think highway like airport pani not so well, but they're doing it, so might as well just like try and hand on trains. अब खै पाल त खनिरहेको थियो यार अस्ति नै.
हैन
सुरुङहरु खनिरहेको थियो.
Trains are complicated to do until you start, and it's a long-term project.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to finish. I think finally अलिकति long-term infrastructure मा काम चाहिँ सुरु भएको छ. पहिला त अलिकति long-term vision वाला infrastructure काम नभइदिएर नि problem भएको थियो. अहिले त like you said त्यो नागढुङ्गाको tunnel section is being I hear that it's moving in a pretty fast pace, and these airports have come to life pretty quickly, हैन? So the way I look at it चाहिँ के भने अब 3टा एयरपोर्ट बनिसक्यो. एउटा एयरपोर्ट ओभरली स्याचुरेटेड छ काठमाडौँ. भैरवा फुल अपरेसनमा आएको छैन. एन्ड पोखरा इज अल्सो barely beginning to come up, हैन? अनि भैरवा has had its own issues in starting up, हैन? I agree काठमाडौँ एयरपोर्ट जस्तो भैरवा र पोखरा पनि एकदमै बिजोग हुने बेलासम्म अर्को एयरपोर्ट अप नहुने, we don't want that. But I guess considering that we've built up so much infrastructure now, it is absolutely logical to wait until we at least reach a certain % of capacity in both of the other airports before we say, okay, we need a 4th one. Because the business case seems to be very weak looking at how things have happened, हैन? अनि अब eventually उ चाहिँ हुँदैन. So many people are saying अब यो travel volume चाहिँ बढ्छ नेपालबाट बाहिर जाने मान्छेको बिस्तारै बिस्तारै, and hopefully we'll slowly have the numbers from people going abroad to work these odd jobs. I hope that number decreases and we see a proportional increase, or in fact the same people can eventually go out as travelers, and then there will be a shift, हैन? This is me being optimistic. This opinion is not shared by the former Prime Minister and his wife, but then let's hope that happens at some point, हैन? But other than that, I don't think we need to rush into another big infrastructure project. I'm guessing there's plenty of highways we need to fix before we have to worry about that, because highways are obviously a problem.
Yeah, मलाई चाहिँ मेरो चाहिँ major concern, because I mean I used to drive a lot when I was in Nepal, is the national highway is 2 lane. मेरो त्यही हो झन् लाइक सिङ्गल लेन वान साइड इज सिङ्गल लेन लाइक हुन्छ नि सो द नेसनल हाइवे द्याट कनेक्ट्स इस्ट एन्ड द वेस्ट सो मेरो चाहिँ आई फिल लाइक हुन्छ नि लाइक जस्ट लेट अस फोकस अन कनेक्टिङ आवर इन्टर सिटी ट्राभल्स होइन
लेट्स लर्न फ्रम इन्डिया India भन्छ म त लाइक they've scaled things up properly, eh?
Massive.
Exactly. All right, I think that was hamro tinta kura for today, and I have a recommendation today because we've been talking a lot about marketing and what's thrown around and all of that. So my recommendation is a book called Bad Science. It's a book by Ben Goldacre, who's a scientist and a science writer for The Guardian, हैन? And your book say it would not be an overstatement if I said that it changed the way I look at the world. Because it looks at the way science and data are distorted to fit somebody's narrative. And since we talked about airports, Nepal ma tonnai bhacha cha yo kura both sides bata bhacha jasto लाग्छ. I am not informed enough to be able to say who's right and who's wrong. I can say demand side bata distortion bhako cha because that is language I understand, हैन? Environmental side bata ke bhako cha I do not fully understand it. But then this is very relevant in the sense of it teaches you what you should question and what you should look at, and it gives really good simple examples of how people use fancy science language, which basically means nothing, to sell ideas and products. And it's a fantastic book. So we'll leave a link to the website run by Ben Goldacre. I think he's last posted on the website in 2017, but that also has the link to the book itself. And it's a wonderful read.
Perfect there. Thank you so much for that recommendation. So everything we talk about in these series, the description ma janu bhayo bhane you can find links to all the articles that we referred to. हामीले सबै news को बारेमा कुरा गर्दाखेरि we talk about these newses from articles that we've read, and also the recommendation पनि is going to be right there. So make sure if you find anything interesting, just go down in the description. Everything will be available. होइन अनि at the end of the day, like, share, subscribe, support us through this, and thank you, and we'll see you in the next episode.
More episodes coming later this year.
Yes. Bye-bye.